have one more lesson on Mansoul tonight. There's two more after this one, and I think it's back to back to back, so we won't have to try to stretch our mind back for 3 weeks or 4 weeks to remember everything. So let me start off by reviewing the story some. I think the lessons are, at least for me, are a little bit more gripping if I know the story. Helps me remember anyway. It's a good object lesson. So Mansoul is a city that represents a person and starts off perfect, like Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden, and sinless. And then Mansoul eventually listens to the lies of DIABOLUS and rebel against King Shaddai. They're picturing the fall of man. DIABOLUS then comes and takes over the town, and the Diabolonians come and live in the town as well. Then King Shaddai comes and wages war against DIABOLUS and rescues Mansoul from DIABOLUS. That's picturing salvation. And then that's where the story last 2 weeks ago, I think it was, picked up right after that with the glory days. There we saw those in the questions, the new charter, new ministers, and particularly there the Lord High Secretary, the Holy Spirit coming to live in the city, new robes. And Mansoul lived in that state of euphoria for a while, and then they kind of got a little cold. And Mr. Carnal Security came and flattered them and distracted them and got them to go to the banquets, and they slowly drifted from God. And the story last time ended with them at a feast that Carnal Security put on, this big lavish feast. And Mr. Godly Fear was invited to this one in particular because Mr. Carnal Security wanted to get him in his clutches. And Mr. Godly Fear didn't listen, and he stood up and proclaimed to the people, look at what you're doing. You're here with a Babylonian feasting at his table. We used to go eat with Prince Emmanuel, and now we're eating with the Babylonian. And the story ended last week with them burning down Mr. Carnal Security's house and realizing that they've kind of made a mess of things. All right, let's continue on with the story, and then I had to stop thinking about applications because so many came to mind, and a lot of them convicting for me to think about these things. So let's hit the story quickly, and then we can get to those things. All right, the next chapter is called Further Conspiracy in the Pit, and it's kind of got two pieces to it, two separate stories, parts of the story. The first half follows the Mansoulians once they realized how stupid they had been and how much they had followed these Babylonians. And it goes through lots of things that they tried. The first thing they did was they went to the Lord High Secretary, but the book says that he wouldn't listen to them. He wouldn't let them in. And at first that kind of thought, the Holy Spirit is like, no, don't listen to me. But towards the end of the book, there was a statement that I think explains to us why the Holy Spirit, the Lord High Secretary, would not listen to them, would not let them come in, and he could send petitions on to the king. This is the statement. The Mansoulians, the Mansoulians send petitions, let me read that again. The Mansoulians send petitions and regard iniquity in their hearts. They grow weaker. They cry to the king for help and take the Babylonians to their bosom. Here, Mansoul realizes they had messed up, but they wanted it both. They wanted to hold on to the fun that the Babylonians were providing, and they wanted to go to God and get his protection. They wanted both things there. So the first thing, they went to Lord High Secretary, and he wouldn't let them in to send petitions on. Then they listened to a whole bunch of sermons. Mr. Conscience comes, and later on, Mr. Boanerges, I think is the way to say it, preaches sermons. They fasted. They were really serious, and they went from the faring sumptuously to fasting. And they also wrote petitions to the king. And the petitions, the king wouldn't even open up the castle to let the petitions come in. After all these things they did, there was phrases similar to this, but it did not help, or something like that. They would try fasting, and it didn't fix the problem. They would try listening to sermons. They'd try different things. But the thing to keep in mind is they were wanting to, do these spiritual acts, but hold on to the worldly things. They wanted both of those, and it wasn't going to work. All right, and in that state there, the Diabolus continue to get discouraged and get weaker and become easier prey for Diabolus in time. And the garments that they were given, those new garments that were white, last time we saw them beginning to get dirty, and they get filthy and ripped and torn to tatters here. All right, the second half of this chapter follows some of the Diabolonians and what they're doing. Remember, when they fell initially, the Diabolonians came and lived in the city. This is representing our sin nature. It's going to be with us till we get to heaven. I think as I get older, more and more when the Bible talks about the rest in heaven, I'm ready to be done with the sin nature. Right, it's going to be gone. But while we're alive on this earth, it's there. And these Diabolonians are still living in the town. And a group of them get together. I should probably say a couple names so we can ask questions next week. At Mr. Mischief's house. And they write some letters to Diabolus. And there's a chain of letters that go back and forth between all of them. I'm not going to follow the whole conversation. But these Diabolonians in the town are wanting advice about how they can best assist Diabolus in helping Diabolus come back into the town. And Diabolus decides on two things for them to do. The first one was some of the Diabolonians that were in the town would hire them out as servants and assistants to people in the town, but they would go disguised. They would act like they were something else, and then they would intentionally target prominent people in the town and go live in their houses and be there and be the worldly influence in disguise. So that was one prong. The other prong was Diabolus was going to gather an army of 20,000 doubters to come and attack the city. The Diabolonians in the city would further weaken and discourage them, and he would show up with the army and attack the city. All right, so that was that chapter. The next chapter is this attack that comes from Diabolus. Prior to the attack, there's a character in the story named Mr. Prywell, and he was described as intentionally being created so that he couldn't sleep at night. He would get up and wander around the city because he couldn't sleep. And this particular night, he's wandering around, and he hears some people talking, and let's see here, where were they? At Vile Hill. So you can guess here it's some Diabolonians talking. And he snuck close and listened to the conversation through the night as they were talking. And he heard them lay out this plan that they had gotten from Diabolus, and they'd already implemented it. Some of these Diabolonians were living in prominent people's houses already. So here's them, this plan that's been implemented, and of the 20,000 doubters that are being gathered to come and attack. Mr. Prywell the next day goes right to the Lord Mayor, understanding, catches him, and they gather the prominent people of the town together, blow trumpets, and they have a big meeting in the town center where they're weeping and realizing more of the danger that they're in. And again, this phrase is in there. They were sending petitions to Emmanuel and courting Diabolonians in their midst. So even here in the danger, they realized the danger that was coming. They were still trying to hold on to the world. And to me, that's the main lesson of this whole thing, is that we can't do both. Hopefully we get right with God. But too often, especially today, we're so connected to the world that we get pulled both ways. And just like the Mansoulians were not alert and watchful, we can be the same way. So, all right, so they come and tell them about it. They blow the trumpets, get the townspeople's attention, and then the city begins to prepare itself. The gates are locked and guarded. They begin to drill and prepare for the battle. They search and find some Diabolonians and execute them, but don't really clean the city out that well. The book ends with the Mansoulians here being weak but alert, is the way that we're described. All right, a few weeks after that, after Mr. Prywell finds out what's coming, that Diabolus arrives with his army of doubters. Unbelief was the captain, and there were a bunch of different divisions all different things. Their names are different things that we could doubt as Christians. God's grace, the resurrection, joy, different things that we could doubt. And these units represent different things we could doubt in our Christian life. So Diabolus shows up with this army. The last chapter for tonight deals with the attack, the battle that takes place. And Diabolus attacks first at Eargate. And here the Mansoulians successfully repel Diabolus and his men. I have been watching the pictures. Okay. I didn't really warn Mr. Porzinski about how to flip them, so hopefully you stayed with me. There's an initial attack at Eargate that the Mansoulians successfully fend off Diabolus. During the night, the Mansoulians attempt to attack, well, they don't attempt, they attack. They go out the gates and attack the Diabolonians in the field, and that goes very badly. Again, they're the picture of darkness and operating there, in Diabolus's favorite time of the day. The attack at night fails. And then after that, Diabolus attacks at Field Gate, another gate to the city. And here the Mansoulians resisted, but failed. And Diabolus breaks through the gate and gained entrance to the city. And Diabolus describes it this way: at the last, it was their emotions that did them in. And there's some lessons there for us to think about our emotions. All right, so the story ends for this week right there with Diabolus breaking into the town and taking over. I think it's Dr. Mitchell next week. All right, so he gets to bring us back from the edge of despair, I hope. So, all right, as I was thinking about this, there was just a ton of different things we can learn from this. And like I said, I started listing different lessons and verses, and I eventually kind of culled it out and tried to think of or just put down the more prominent things. So I have here a list, I think it's 7, I didn't number them, of points for us to think about and some verses for them. And most I'll make the point that we can learn and then read a verse. And to me, these verses are awful convicting. If you think about what happened in Mansoul and how they were playing with the world, basically. They listened, were deceived by the Diabolonians, and we're trying to have it both ways. All right, the first one is actually a repeat from last week, but I think it bears to repeat again. Be alert for Satan's attack, or maybe be alert for our weak flesh. Your flesh and my flesh likes wrong, and we need to be alert. All right? I don't have a dog, and I praise God for that. All right, but I've been at people's houses that have dogs, and anytime the door opens at some of these houses, it's an instant panic. Wait, the dog! Because they know I was at one house where they nicknamed the dog the Rocket, because as soon as the door was open, it's gone. All right, they were alert and sensitive, and anytime the door opened, it was a moment of panic. And that's the way we should be. At any moment, our flesh has the capacity to rocket off into sin. We've got to be alert. 1 Peter 5:8, be sober, be vigilant, because your adversary the devil, as a roaring lion, walketh about seeking whom he may devour. Okay, we teach these in junior church and on our bus and stuff, but he wants us, and we need to be alert. All right, second lesson is don't try or don't allow yourself to accommodate both the world and God. We can't. All right. The statement from the book was the Mansoulians sent petitions and regarded iniquity in their heart. They grow weaker, they cry to the king for help, and take the Diabolonians to their bosoms. They're wanting both ways. They would go through the motions of crying out to God, but then they wouldn't give up their sin. Right? Here's several verses to think about. Psalm 66, 18 through 20. If I regard iniquity in my heart, the Lord will not hear me. I'll read the rest. But again, think about that. If we're holding on to sin, we're going to the Lord High Secretary's house and he won't open the door, just like the Mansoulians. But verily, I'll read it again. Verse 18, if I regard iniquity in my heart, the Lord will not hear me. But verily God hath heard me. He hath attended to the voice of my prayer. Blessed be God, which hath not turned away my prayer, nor his mercy from me. And the other is true. There, David wasn't complaining that God didn't listen to him. He was praising God that God did. His life was clean. And when he went to God, he listened to them. All right, Matthew 6:24, another well-known verse. No man can serve two masters, for either he will hate the one and love the other, or else he will hold on to the one and despise the other. You cannot serve, God and mammon. We get stuck in that middle, and it's a dangerous place to be. We're going to get pulled one way or the other. Here in the story, they get sucked over to DIABOLUS and get taken over by him. And in God's mercy, God comes back to save them. But it's a dangerous place to be trying to serve God and mammon. All right, the next lesson is we are not to love the world. We're told to love God with all our heart. Probably you guys could quote some verses that deal with this, but let me read them and let it sink in like it has for me. 1 John 2:15-17. Love not the world, neither the things that are in the world. Now the verse goes on, I'll read it, to describe the lust of the eyes and lust of the flesh and those types of things. And we often, I think of the sin in the world. But I think also just saying the world, the whole system that the world has for us. There's things that aren't just explicitly wrong, but we're not supposed to love them. All right? We're supposed to love God. All right? I'll come back to that. Love not the world, neither the things that are in the world. If any man love the world, the love of the Father is not in him. For all that is in the world, the lust of the flesh and the lust of the eyes and the pride of life is not of the Father, but is of the world. And the world passeth away, and the lust thereof, but he that doeth the will of God abideth forever. We're supposed to love God, not love the world. 1 John 5:2-3. By this we know that we love the children of God when we love God and keep his commandments. For this is the love of God, that we keep his commandments, and his commandments are not grievous. It's not a burden. Oh, I can't do that. Oh, I've got to be in church. No, it's not a burden. If the Mansoulians had kept God's commandments, they wouldn't have been at the feast with Mr. Carnal Security. They'd have been in the castle with Prince Emmanuel, faring on food from God. They would have kept their robes clean, and as soon as they got dirty, they would have run to him to get it fixed, as he told them to do. Right? It's not like God's in heaven. He's not like a school teacher whose whole purpose in life is to make their students miserable. All right? That was a joke. All right? That's not a school teacher's purpose. But God's not in heaven trying to figure out how to make our life miserable. All right? The commandments that he gives us is because he loves us. And we're fools, really, when we don't follow them. All right, another lesson. Again, these are intertwined, but we are to be unspotted from the world. It's not just like, don't roll in the muck. I went to the Schellberg farm with my bus Sunday, and we walked over and saw the pigs in all their glory laying in the mud. It's not like God said, well, don't get that bad. A little bit's okay. Unspotted. It's not supposed to be honest. And you're probably thinking of this verse, James 1:27. Pure religion and undefiled before God and the Father is this, to visit the fatherless and the widows in their affliction, and to keep himself unspotted from the world. Again, think about that. How much mud is splattered on me from the world? How many rips are in my robe from God because I haven't kept myself unspotted from the world? 1 Peter 1, I'll read 13-16. Wherefore, gird up the loins of your mind, be sober, and hope to the end for the grace that is to be brought unto you at the revelation of Jesus Christ. As obedient children, not fashion yourselves according to the former lust in your ignorance, but as he which hath called you is holy, so be ye holy in all manner of conversation, because it is written, be ye holy, for I am holy. That's God's command for us. Be holy, unspotted from the world. One more passage here with this being unspotted. James 4, 1 through 4. I thought almost this was an outline of the book as I was looking at this. It says, from whence come wars and fightings among you? Come they not hence even of your lust that war in your members? Ye lust and have not, ye kill and desire to have and cannot obtain. Ye fight and war, yet ye have not, because ye ask not. That's the Mansoulings before they began to send petitions. And then it says, ye ask and receive not, because ye ask amiss, that ye may consume it upon your lusts. Ye adulterers and adulteresses, know ye not that the friendship of the world is enmity with God? Whosoever therefore will be a friend of the world is the enemy of God. Again, that's convicting. How friendly are we with the world? If we're a friend with the world, we're the enemy of God. And he uses the phrase, the two terms, adulterers and adulteresses. That's pretty strong. Unspotted from the world. All right, another lesson I think here is be honest with our description of our own worldliness or sin. It's real easy, talk to any child who's been caught doing something, and the story they tell you will be about 180 degrees from what really happened. No, I wasn't hitting, my sister on the head with the bat. I was saving her from a bee sting. It's going to be colored really, really special. All right. There's danger there when we do that to ourselves. The Diabolonians came into the Mansoulians' houses in disguise. I didn't give you their names before. I've got them here. A man named Mr. Covetousness. His disguise was Mr. Prudent Thrift. It wasn't that, I don't love money. It's just that I'm wise with my money. I'm saving my money. Mr. Prudent Thrift, a disguise. Mr. Lasciviousness, just sinful foolishness. His name was Mr. Harmless Mirth. It's easy for us to paint our sin as what it isn't and, excuse it. Lord Anger was Lord Good Zeal. All right? We've got to be honest with ourselves. Don't let yourself look at your sin and your connection and the things in the world that grab you and paint them as, well, that's not that bad. If you love the world, that's a problem. Right? We can't love the world. I thought of a couple of things here. I think a lot of us might make a statement like, I don't go to movies. I'm a good Christian. But think of how much we stream right here. And I follow some YouTube channels about woodworking, because I like woodworking, and people shooting large caliber rifles at explosive things. I enjoy it. But should I love that? It's easy to. It's easy to every day think, I wonder if they got a new video out. Did they post something? No, it's not wrong, I hope. If we are, Mr. Bain and Ray are in trouble to do woodworking. All right, a bunch of heathens. It's not wrong. But if I love those channels, that's the world. I can't love it. Many of us might, or you might say, I just watch good things on the internet or wherever. I just saw an article today about Netflix and their children's programming introducing main characters that are transgender. The one particular one is a transgender girl. And don't let yourself forget that's a boy dressed up as a girl. All right, that's what that is. In the children's programming, all right, how can we get anywhere near that and not be spotted? Right? like I said, to me it's convicting because it is so much around us. We're so connected to all this, and it's easy to let, what's the next woodworking video, or what do they shoot next that I want to watch? Let that consume my thought. And I get up in the morning and say, what's the next chapters today? What does Isaiah say for tomorrow? All right? It's easy. And God says we shouldn't love those things. Also put down here, social media. It's not evil. Mrs. Armacost spends a lot of time on social media. All right? All those college things that post there, through her fingers. All right? It's not evil. All right? Or is it Sabrina? It's not evil. But do you love it? Think about I'm not going to touch social media for a week. What do you start to sweat, panic? Would you have the same reaction if someone said, let's not read our Bible for a week? We can't love the world. That's why I said more I thought about this is just really convicting. It is so easy to let those things consume us. And we've got to be honest, I think, here. It's the world. We can't paint our little pet things as, that's innocent and fine. It's okay if I like that. No, I can't love it. We've got to live in this world. You've got to have a job, and you've got to make money. We've got to live in this world, but we can't love it. All right, two more. These are fairly quick here. The next one is, don't let your feelings be your guide. I just have two comments here. I put the Disney princess gets it wrong every time. All right. The thing that got them in the story was feelgate. Our feelings can't guide us. The truth should guide us. God should guide us. This right here should guide us, not our feelings. Our feelings are dangerous territory. All right, very dangerous territory as our guide. And then the last one here, make sure you're worshiping or praying to God as He expects. All right, we saw the Mansoulians are very fervent, sending letters and petitions. I didn't go through them all, but they send multiple people in different letters and all kinds of stuff where they fast, they listen to sermons, but they weren't approaching God like He expected. Right? Think back to Cain and Abel. It's real easy to condemn Cain, and I think justly so, because he worshiped God in the way he thought was good. We've got to be careful not to do that. The Mansoulians, they were really serious about it. We're worshiping God, but they forgot the very commandments that God had given them about how they should approach Him. Right? We've got to be careful that we worship God as He tells us. It's right here. All right, so Mansoul. To me, it's a sobering set of lessons from the story today, but I think some importance.